Wanted to welcome you all to Observability Fundamentals. My name is John Meredith. I will be your instructor for this event. The only thing I ask is that if you have a question, please ask it. Okay. You all have my capability, so you can ask your questions verbally, or if you're shy, you can ask it in the chat box or whatever you want. But certainly would love to hear any questions and stuff you have. This will certainly keep things a little more interactive rather than me trying to do some sort of a bad monologue. So otherwise, like I said, I want to welcome you all. I am a Sumo trainer. I have been with Sumo a little less than 2 years. I am based out of my home in New Hampshire. In New Hampshire on the U.S. East Coast, about an hour to an hour and a half north of Boston, Massachusetts. As you can see from my window out here, the sun is starting to come up. So like I said, it's 7 a.m. local. And otherwise, let's go get it started. Also want to take a moment here to introduce. I let my colleague Nanda introduce herself and say hi. So Nanda, you want to say hi, please?
Yeah. Hi everybody. I'm Nanda, based in Pune, India. I work as instructional designer. I've joined Sumo 1.5 years back. I work in Sumo Logic doc team. We work with the online trainings and training materials. And I welcome all of you to this training. Over to you, John.
Thank you very much, Nanda. I've stopped my streaming video just to save some bandwidth and that sort of thing. So again, the only thing I ask is, like I said, if you have questions, please let us know. So what are we going to talk about here today? Let's get to it here. And really what we want to do is talk about observability and how we talk about observability. Some people think of observability as monitoring. We think of it a lot more than that. We'll talk about those 3 pillars of observability: metrics, tracing, and logs. And you'll see that in a lot of forms today, not the least of which is probably a certification question on the certification exam. So note that the 3 pillars of observability for us are metrics, tracing, and logs. We'll also talk about things like the root cause explorer. We'll talk about tracing and some various things to help troubleshoot issues. And so by the time this is all said and done, you'll have a good idea of what we mean by observability and the tools and stuff associated with observability. So as you can see, here is our agenda. We've got lots of conversations, lots of slides, lots of hands-on labs. And my focus is going to be those hands-on labs where I would like you and I to work together to see things, and I'll be your guide and pointing things out. But we've got basically 4 labs that we'll do. Probably after the second lab, I will probably take a 10-minute break, because I'm sure you could probably use one. So what do we mean by observability? Okay, well, for those of you not familiar with Sumo Logic anyway, oops, excuse me, my slides have a mind of their own there. In Sumo Logic, like I said, we typically, people think in terms of us about a continuous intelligence platform that processes logs and metrics, right? So you can look at your operational environment. How is my systems doing? Are my systems up, down, that sort of thing? Where are my users logging in from? Are they logging in successfully? Are they having failures? Sort of security type stuff. And then, of course, what are my users purchasing? What are they interested in? What are they doing on my websites? What are they looking at? What are they not looking at? Business intelligence. And of course, at a high level, we can look at those 3 things across the globe and see, for example, if we know that AWS Guard Duty is mentioning there's an area of the world that's kind of under attack right now with regards to cyber attacks and things like that, we can see other customers in the area that might be impacted. So you'll find that this product is something for everybody. And again, your data can come in a lot of different ways through applications, microservices, software as a service type thing, mobile devices, that sort of thing. Sumo Logic is born in the cloud, raised in the cloud. We are on the cloud. We scale up, scale down as you need to. You don't have to worry about it. We also have a bunch of application programming interfaces, APIs, which are hooks that allow you to do things in Sumo programmatically from other tools, other applications, if you need to. Also, we'll take advantage of those APIs from other products like Slack or Microsoft Teams, so that you can send messages and alerts via Slack and Microsoft Teams, as well as other products. Probably the most important thing for us is this area right here. We work with great rigor to maintain our SOC 2 compliance, our CSASR certifications, all that sort of thing. About 6 months ago, we received our FedRAMP moderate authorization. So for those of in the US that deal with the government, we are now FedRAMP certified. So give you a little idea of what's happening there. Okay. Do we have a Slack community? Yes, Marilyn, we do. So Marilyn asked the question in the chat box. We have a Slack community. Nanda, if you could answer that question a little more directly, I'd appreciate it. So what is observability to us, right? You know, typically some people might think observability is monitoring, and we'll get into that conversation in just a little bit. But we say we're Sumo Logic coffee, right? We serve a great cup of coffee, and we'll talk more about Sumo Logic coffee later in this class. But we want to observe if the app has any failures, any problems, any issues, that sort of thing. We want to be able to notify and alert. And to me, that's kind of monitoring. I'm not sure that's observability, but ultimately what we want to do is we want to take it farther. We want to make conclusions and do root cause analysis to understand what's happening. So we're going to leverage logs, we're going to leverage metrics, we're going to leverage traces, and we're going to sit there and figure out what the heck is going on and why things broke down so that we can prevent it and make sure it doesn't happen again. And then, of course, like I said, we'll take the action, and then, of course, we'll repeat the whole process. So for us, observability is more than typically monitoring. People think in terms of, sometimes some companies think when they're observing, they've got, you know, dashboards that they're looking at or alerts that they're looking at. But to us, observability is far more than that. And you'll see that as we continue on. The three pillars of observability are, for us, tracing, metrics, and logs. Again, that's tracing, metrics, and logs make up those three pillars of observability, and you will see that in the, you'll see that, and like I said, in the certification exam coming up. That's one of the questions. So, by the way, you will have access to these slides for the exam. If you go back to, hang on a second, let me stop my slides here for just a second. Maybe I'll stop my slides here in just a second. Give me a second, I'll come back to that. If you go into your portal, right, back to your portal here for Illuminate, you'll see there's a section here called resources. And if you click on resources, that takes you to the resource center where we've got a whole slew of documents. If you filter for training, that's these training sessions that we have today and tomorrow, you'll find that if you scroll to the bottom here, here is our lab guide, which I'll provide you a copy of that as well. And then here are the slides that I'm using. These are all in PDF format. So if you want to download these, you certainly can for the exam. Our certification exams are open book, open notes, open slides. So we try to make it very easy for you to pass. Also, while you're taking the exam, if you take it right after the 2-hour window when we're done lecturing and stuff, I'll be here to proctor and answer any questions you get stuck on. Our goal is to help you become successful, pure and simple, okay? Now, back to our presentation. You know, if you think about it, what you want in your company, in your organization, whatever, you know, you're dealing with customers, you want reliability, right? Reliability is the foundation of everything. It's got to be reliable. It's got to be dependable, that sort of thing. But ultimately, the holy grail of customer experience here is going to sit on three pillars. Availability. Are you up 24/7? You probably need to be. Performance. Somebody clicks on something, they want to see how things are reacting. They want to get there instantaneously. They don't want to wait. They don't want a beach ball or a busy signal. They want to be able to get there. And then, of course, it's also got to be secure. Now, we've done some research, and we found out, based on some different organizations out there, that about 100 milliseconds, which is 1/10 of a second of downtime, reduces e-commerce sales by 1%. That's pretty significant. That's not even a whole second. 0.5 seconds of latency drop traffic by 20%. So again, if you have some latency issues, people will go elsewhere. They don't want to play. So if they have to wait more than a half a second, you're going to lose some business. And then finally, under security, denial of service attacks are anticipated to double to about 14.5 million by next year. And so these are points to consider with regards to ensuring that you've got a good customer experience. And obviously, observability supports this, because if you have transparency throughout your application, you can see how your performance is, how your availability is, how your security is, you're basically going to be in good shape. Now, as I mentioned before, some people think in terms of monitoring, right? Monitoring is a bunch of dashboards where I can see things, a bunch of alerts. They kind of tell us what's wrong. For us, observability is more than monitoring, right? We want to understand why something is wrong. And so we want to be able to diagnose it. We want to be able to use tools to dive deeper into these things. You can think of it as an iceberg, literally. And so monitoring typically is answering the what's, a notification of an issue, that sort of thing, takes approximately 20% of your data. And then from there, it's the stuff that you can't see. This tip of the iceberg you see on top of the waterline. It's the stuff below the waterline that can really tear into you. And so under diagnosing, right, which takes about 30% more of your data, again, we can see where things are starting to break down. We can kind of get an idea of what areas I need to focus on and that sort of thing. But ultimately, like I said, what we want to do is we want to understand why and how things broke down. We want to understand the root cause. And so for troubleshooting, that's going to take approximately another 50% of your data. And we're going to be able to understand how things work. And you'll find that we have tools in here to help us understand how we can monitor, diagnose, and troubleshoot. In fact, we talk about our incident remediation process, right? Again, you can monitor, and we can monitor using alerting and dashboard capabilities, send out alerts. We can use dashboarding, all kinds of fun stuff. For diagnosing, we can use things like the Entity Explorer, the Trace Analytics, and the Metrics Explorer. If you're familiar with Sumo, some of these you probably are familiar with. You probably played with metrics before, you probably played with our logs before. But we've added a bunch of new things like our traces, like our Explorer, things like that we're going to focus on in this class. And then finally, to troubleshoot it, right? We're going to need to use tools like the Root Cause Explorer. We're going to need to be able to understand and look at our logs. For those of you who've had other Sumo classes, in the past, we've made the statements that metrics tell us what is going on, but logs will tell us why. That is still true. That is very true. We will use logs to find out why things have broken down, understand the why, but we're going to use some additional tools to help us in this process. Okay. Marilyn asked, what types of metrics do we use? Boy, that's a large question. There's all kinds of metrics that we use. System performance metrics with regards to system, CPU usage and, volume type and network bandwidth and all that sort of thing. We can also use other types of metrics, any sort of KPI that you typically would have, Marilyn. So we use all kinds of metrics to answer your question. If we're dealing with Kubernetes environment, for example, we use a boatload of metrics from the Kubernetes environments and things like that. So it's not I wish it was a simple 2-sentence answer, but it's not. So sorry. So if you think about things with the cloud, on the cloud these days, right? You've got your various down here at your database layer. You've got your various databases, right? They may be relational, they may be non-relational. And because of the cloud, there's a bunch of those different data stores floating around, right? And then on top of that, that's being connected to various microservices. Those microservices could run with Java, they can run with Python, they can run with whatever they're going to run on. And again, these microservices exist in the various environments and stuff that you have. And then going up there, there's probably some sort of an API gateway that allows us to interface with our clients. Whether our clients are on a desktop, on a mobile device, on a tablet, doesn't make any difference. We need to be able to see across this entire structure. We need to see the clients, the gateway, the containers, the databases, everything. And if you're on the cloud, because you've got all these different environments running these different microservices, that can be kind of complex. That can be kind of challenging. Fortunately for us, we have the ability to do that. We can see across your entire cloud environment and see basically what's going on. So again, here we can remediate, monitor, diagnose, and troubleshoot, do this incident remediation process. Okay. Now, this also makes a great test question, so I'll point it out for you. Those of you who want to grab a screen capture, you're certainly welcome to do so. When we talk about monitoring, again, that's that 20% of data, we tend to look at the logs, metrics, and traces. So again, we'll have some sort of an alert that's probably based on some sort of a metric. And that alert may come from a dashboard. And so we'll have some trace transactional type things. We'll be able to see what's going on. I'll talk more about traces in a bit. And then from there, as we go into understanding and diagnosing, we're going to start looking at what is our deployment, what is our cluster if we're on a cloud type environment, what specifically is happening within the transaction. And that transaction is really where traces comes in. So when I'm doing diagnosing information, I'm looking typically at logs and traces, not looking so much at metrics. And I'm looking at a process that is occurring and how things are going. And as I said, I'll go into that in more detail in just a little bit. And then finally, as we get into looking more at the microservices, the pods, the components and stuff like that, here we're going to use the root cause explorer, particularly looking at data from our logs. So as we troubleshoot stuff like that, we're going to get into logs and using tools like the root cause explorer. But you'll see there's a test question about when we monitor, what do we use? When we diagnose, what do we use? Troubleshoot, what do we use? So just wanted you to be fair there and let you guys know, okay? And let me go ahead and advance my slide here. Now, as far as value of doing this observability approach, the way we've set it up, this is something for everybody. So whether you're in DevOps or you're in software engineering or DevSecOps, the ability to monitor, diagnose, and troubleshoot, we provide something for everybody. And as you can see, depending on what your role is, what you're trying to do, like I said, you'll find that this observability solution will allow that to happen, will help you out there. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So let's just do a quick little poll here, just to kind of reinforce some things. So which of the following observability tools make the pillars for the observability solution? Feel free to type it in the chat box if you would. By the way, there's more than one correct answer here. So feel free to let me know what are the 3 pillars of the observability solution. And Marilyn says the logs, metrics, and tracing, as does a bunch of other folks. Thank you very much. That's absolutely correct. Good job. We're cooking now. All right. And again, we talked about how logs, metrics, and tracing allow us to be able to go through this whole stack. So nice work. Thank you very much. Yep. All right. Second poll activity, it's designed to lead us into our next topic where we'll start getting into hands-on and start seeing things and playing with things, and we'll knock off the PowerPoint stuff, okay? It says, while monitoring the request per second in an HTTP service, you noticed an abrupt spike in traffic, and you want to know why this is happening or what's happening in our system, right? You want to know what's happening specifically. Which of the following observability techniques would help us understand the deeper visibility and insight to help us understand the cause of this spike? Would we look at logs? Would we look at metrics? Or would we look at traces? And I realize this is kind of an innocuous little answer because you may not know yet what's going on. I'm going to actually explain it in just a little bit, okay? A lot of folks are saying logs. And logs will ultimately tell us why things are broken down. You're absolutely correct. But it typically doesn't tell us what. So what we're looking for, and traces is dealing with a transactional system. We don't have a transactional system here. So the one that's left is metrics, and that's really what we're looking for. So we're going to sit there and use metrics to see, and typically when we do alerts, that's typically the first thing that tells us what's happening. So what we're looking for here, and by the way, when we did this internally, that question internally, we had a lot of folks get it wrong too. So we understand, we get it. We thank you for the feedback. But our goal here is to focus on metrics, and we want to talk about metrics and using the root cause explorer. So we want to see when we can use metrics, and metric can be our best option for our observability solution. Now, let me just show you some slides, and then we'll get into the tool. So bear with me, we'll get there. We have a tool here called the Root Cause Explorer. And the Root Cause Explorer shows us the relationship between all the various microsystems and things in our product throughout your environment. So we can see by errors, we can see by bottlenecks, we can see by latency, that sort of thing, and we can filter. We can filter by AWS and host information, by the account ID, by the region, by the namespace. We can filter by Kubernetes, by the cluster, by the node, by the namespace. We can filter by application services, specifically what application, what entity, so forth and so on. And there's some other filters that we can use. Okay. So this allows us to see the relationship between the various components of your environment. And for those of you maybe on the cloud, when you think about, gee, in your cloud environment, how can I see across all my microservices and what's happening where? This tool is going to allow you to do that, okay? We typically grab data from OpenTelemetry. We grab data from like AWS CloudTrail metrics and Kubernetes metrics and a whole slew of things. So going back to your earlier question, Marilyn, as you can see here from the slide, there's a lot of different metric sources that we can grab, okay? Now here's actually a better shot where again, we can see that we've got some bottlenecks, which are on orange. We've got some errors, which are on red. We've got some latency, which is denoted in blue. And here in my, this graph, you'll see across my x-axis, that's a timeline. So across my x-axis is time. Across my y-axis is something called the drift. And what drift is how far off of the norm are we? So the higher we are, the more off of the norm we are. And so these values are suddenly have gone up much higher for whatever reason. And what's interesting about this is you'll see that you'll be able to see the relationship that, you know, this feeds this, which feeds this, which feeds this, which may go back to this. And ultimately there might be our root cause. So we can very quickly see across the components to see what feeds what. By the way, down here at the bottom, we've kind of taken this 3D look and we've kind of condensed it down to 2D, where you can see where the overlap is between the various entities, the events of interest here. By the way, that's what these are called. These are called events of interest. And then, of course, there's some other filters that we can apply, and I'll talk more about that in just a little bit. We get into the product. So here's where I can filter my data, so I can see specifically what I might be interested in. This can be a bit overwhelming when you look at something like this. So maybe I want to filter it for a specific AWS environment, a specific region, that sort of thing. Again, here are my events of interest in the different colors. And then I can see things across my timeline, which is on my x-axis, and my drift, which is on my y-axis. And then I can see a 2D version of that. And then over here to the right, I can also click on any of these entities and it will tell me more information about that specific entity. Or in this case, I can see kind of a summary of what's happened. I'm going to find it to be a pretty handy tool. Okay. Again, here's another scenario. So I see I've got a bunch of things that are kind of clustered together and maybe they're related. They probably are. And so I can see that, you know, I've got a specific error, another error here, there's a latency piece there, there's some bottlenecks there. Maybe the bottlenecks cause the errors, and you'll find that when we go through an exercise, we are going to have an issue where a bottleneck is going to cause us an error. So as we go through the exercise, if you want to, like I said, you can select a whole lot of little things here to decide if you want to expand, collapse. You can change the instead of circles, you can have like a Gantt chart, all kinds of things. These little icons over here, these trash cans, aren't going to delete your filters. They are going to reset your filters. And these toggle switches will enable or disable your filters. So if you want to remove your filters without removing your filters, you can turn the toggle switch off. Okay, this is the off position, this is the on position. And then, as I said, we've got some other filters here for drift, duration, seasonality, stability, impact, things along those lines. And I'll show you where you can read up on all that, because again, there's going to be some great test questions here. And I want to point you in the right direction to solve that. So we're going to investigate, like I said, groupings of things to see basically what's going on. And as I said before, you can select these pull downs and you can filter for a specific application, or you can specific region, specific app ID, things along those lines. You can put your cursor on a particular entity. A tooltip will appear telling you what's going on, and you'll be able to see more information about that. So let's go ahead and log into the labs, and let's go ahead here and play in. So, ladies and gentlemen, for this exercise, you're a member of the Travel Logic company. You're a part of the AWS incident response team. You're a DevOps specialist, and you're going to help us support our Travel Logic application. This Travel Logic application runs on AWS. It allows people to book flights, cars, and hotels, and that sort of thing. In your role as a DevOps specialist, you are focused on ELB, the application load balancer. You're focused on EC2. You're focused on DynamoDB. So those are your areas of responsibility. The end users have experienced an outage with a lot of 5XX errors, 500 errors, could be 501s, 502s, 503s in the US East area over the last 24 hours. So our mission, should we decide to accept it, is we're going to troubleshoot and try to understand what's happened here using this root cause explorer as well as other things. Now, what I want you to do to get into our training environment, and you'll be able to use this training environment throughout Illuminate. You'll be able to use this training environment for, beyond Illuminate if you want. But I'd like you to log into, fire up a Google Chrome or Firefox browser. And I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. That's service.sumologic.com. And when you go there, it's going to ask you for an email and a password. Now, before you type in your email, I'd like you to pick a 3-digit number. So any 3-digit number, I would like you to type it in the chat box so that we can make sure that you all have unique numbers. I'm going to grab 603, by the way. Why 603? That's the area code for the state of New Hampshire where I live. Okay. So I'm going to grab 603. And then whatever 3-digit number you grab, starting from 001 to 999, I don't care which one you grab, just don't grab 603. You'll be able to log in as training plus analyst with that 3-digit number at sumologic.com as your email address. And then the password is capital S, small e, PT, 2021, exclamation mark. So let us, I see I've got some numbers going in here. Let me stop this for a second. Let me fire up my browser. Let me type in service.sumologic.com. And so it gives me this screen right here where you and I can log in. And I am going to type in training. So I'm not going to have to hit the right key here. Analyst 603 at sumologic.com. And then the password, and I'll actually show you the password here as we're going through this. By the way, I want you to know the password changes every month. So this is our current password, and it will change probably next week as we get into October. It's usually the first Monday of the month. So September 2021 exclamation mark. And when I click sign in, poof, it lets me in. So everybody's grabbed some numbers. Thank you all very much. And Nanda has been really good about putting this information in the chat box, so you can hopefully copy it out of the chat box. One other thing I want to do here real quick is I want to upload for you the manual for this course. So bear with me a second. So I'm uploading a document that you all should be able to, in a minute here, be able to download. So it's in the chat box. You all should be able to pull that down. Now, it's possible that some of your companies restrict your ability to download something through Zoom. And if they do, you're going to have to go out to the Sumo Logic Illuminate Resource Center and download it from there. But this is going to be our lab guide. In fact, I have, whoops, excuse me. I had it open this morning, but I've closed it since back up. So here is our lab guide. And that's what I've just uploaded to the environment. So here again are the directions to log in. What I'd like you all to do is, if you're logged in, please go ahead and raise your hand. So in the participants window, go ahead and click the raise the hand icon. So I know you're logged in and life is good. And if you're having problems logging in, please let us know. Let me or Nanda or Dave Duke know, and we'll gladly try to help you out. I just want to make sure everybody gets logged in. I don't want to leave anybody behind. Thumbs up works too. That's fine. So right now I've got about 6 of you who are logged in and 7 of you. So out of about 20. So hopefully we can do a little bit better than that. I realize sometimes the day job gets in the way. So maybe you're distracted by work and you can't log in right now. I understand. I get that. But I do want to give folks time to get logged in here and get comfortable. So we can go there. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute your mic and ask your questions. If you're having problems logging in, let us know, and we'll do what we can to try to help you. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take what we've got going on here now, and I'm going to go from here. Hang on a second. I am not seeing the ability to lower all hands. You all would go ahead and lower your hands. I'm not seeing the option here to lower all hands. Okay, so let me, again, we're in here. We're in Sumo Logic. By the way, if there's a bunch of tabs opened up here, don't worry about those. I just want to show you the root cause explorer. So for those of you who've had a lot of training with Sumo in the past, you know, we've talked about things like log search and metrics. And we've had these for a little while now, and we haven't really discussed them. Well, we're going to discuss them now. That's what really this is all about. Traces, service maps, root cause. In fact, if I click on root cause, that launches my root cause explorer. And so here I can see, here's my root cause explorer. And as I mentioned before, there's a little chevron here that I can click on to collapse or expand my filters. And since we're focused on a specific environment here, I can filter for that environment. I can filter for a specific region in here. I can filter by AWS and host. I can filter by Kubernetes. I can filter by whatever. And I'm seeing the relationship between all my various entities. Now, again, this area here makes a lot of great test questions. So let me show you where the answer to those test questions are. If we go into our product documentation, and by the way, you can go to our product documentation by clicking on this navigation panel, going into help and going into documentation. You can do it that way. Or if you're kind of like me and old school, I'm just going to bring up a new tab and I'm going to type in help.sumologic.com. Help.sumologic.com brings us into our documentation. And then here in our documentation, these are different chapters of our documentation. And I am looking for our observability solution. And down here where the 3 dots are at the very bottom of the page, if I expand that, I see there's a link here for Root Cause Explorer. And if I click on that link for Root Cause Explorer, I have a very long page here that goes into a lot of detail about the Root Cause Explorer. In fact, one of the test questions you're going to see is about these 6 concepts. So this will answer that question, these various concepts and what they are. And I'll talk about them a little later on. And then we'll talk about how we can filter things. We see the hierarchy, and that's another test question. Okay. And then we can see all the various filters and the various properties of those filters, and all of that good stuff is here as well. Talks about all these various filters, the seasonality, stability, impact, all of that. So this one page answers a fair number of questions, and as such, I would be remiss in my duties if I didn't share it with you. Okay. Said I want to try to help you pass the exam. I really do want to help you get certified. Okay. All right. So this is my root cause explorer. Now, what I want to do is I just wanted to show it to you. Okay. We're not going to play with it just yet. We're actually going to play with something else that's going to take us there. So one of the tools we have at our disposal is the root cause explorer. Another tool that we have at our disposal is our AWS Observability Explorer. So if I click on new, and that's what I want you to do, I want you to click on new, I want you to click on explore. And that should bring this window up. Now, over here, you'll see that we've got some Kubernetes stuff. We've got AWS observability. We've got something called real user monitoring, all kinds of different stuff, okay? What I want you to do is select the AWS observability solution. Now, when you install an AWS observability solution, it has this Explorer for you. And it adds your environment to this. Later on today, in a few hours, we will offer the observability administration class. And in that class, we talk about how to set this up, how to make this all happen, okay? This is just what kind of information we're getting and how to use that information. The other class, the admin class, focuses on how to set this up. By the way, we're doing the admin class again tomorrow as well. So the point is that here under my AWS observability, I look for prod. We're focused on prod. We are focused on US East 1. Now, when I look at prod and US East 1, I see a dashboard here. I can actually click the pull down. I see there's a bunch of different dashboards I can use, but let's focus on this one. And let's get some data here, okay? So here I can see where users are logging in from, where my activity is coming in from. I can see what kind of resources that they're using. Dealing specifically with my database stuff, are they creating things, deleting things, updating things? What are they doing? I can see some activity with my application load balancers, my API gateways, all of that good stuff. Now, if I go into my observability guide, that's that PDF document I uploaded, and we jump to lab 1, again, we are focused on the ELB, the host EC2 stuff, and the DynamoDB. And so the first thing they wanted you to do was to go into Explore by AWS Observability. On the left pane, they want you to click on the US East 1 under the prod account. Oops, excuse me. Then we are going to look at things a little differently. So again, you're in here, AWS Observability, prod, US East 1. Now this dashboard information is really nice, but we can click on AWS region events of interest. And so this brings up almost, it looks like the root cause explorer. It's actually a dashboard showing us elements of the root cause explorer. And here I can see I've got a certain pattern of things. If I click on this or put my cursor over this, I see I've got an ELB application error. And I look at the metric, it's generating 5 HTTP code ELB 5XX errors. So this plays to our wheelhouse. This is our responsibility. If I look at the event preceding that, I see that I've got some sort of a host bottleneck. And it has to do with metric being CPU load average. So my CPU load average is about 850% higher than it usually is, okay? And I can see my stats and when it started, when it ended, and all that sort of thing. And then if I go up here, I see that I've got a DynamoDB bottleneck. And so again, I've got another bottleneck. This is my database bottleneck. And the metric is my right throttle events. So my right throttle events are much higher than they normally are. They're about 1,000% higher. So I can see sort of a pattern forming here. I can see this pattern here. I can see the same pattern over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to investigate this and we're going to see how this all kind of works together. By the way, notice that when I clicked in here and I clicked into my Explorer, it's automatically filtering for my prod. It's automatically filtering for my region. So as you go through here and click on things, it starts to filter that information, okay? As I said, I can click on this particular error here, and I see my summary tab. I see there's an entity tab here. In my summary tab, I can see here's my 5XX count, and it's showing me 3 different metrics here. It's showing me my average 7 days metric for this, and that doesn't have any errors. It's straight across. My previous day, it went straight across, but right now, this current 500 has a spike to it. Okay. So I can see things were running fine up until something recently, and now things are, starting to show errors. Okay. And I can see the information about what metric we're using, what entity, that sort of information. Furthermore, I can go back here, I can click on this. And again, in my summary tab, I can get information about this particular bottleneck. And I can see things that are kind of related to that bottleneck. Again, I can click on my entity and there's nothing there. Then I can go to my DynamoDB, which is before this. So usually what happens is that this stuff happens in chronological order. The first thing that happens may be causing the second or third thing. So here, when I click on my DynamoDB, again, I see the same sort of metric pattern. I'm looking at my right throttle events. And for those of you who have DBA experience, you know that it is possible to adjust a table and change table settings so that you might have read throttling or write throttling events. As a former DBA myself, I think that this is something that is a bit disconcerting. Somebody must have changed something that is now causing some write throttle events. And again, I can see here 7 days ago, I didn't have a problem. Yesterday, I didn't have a problem. Today, I got a problem. And this problem corresponds with this problem. And since this problem occurred first, this is getting closer to my root cause. Okay. We'll actually get into a Lambda error here in a little bit, Marisa. That's another exercise for later today. So we'll get into Lambda. So good question. We'll go down there. So back to my lab here. So again, we're looking at our root cause explorer. We're looking at this information. We're on page 5. I'm going to turn the page, go on to page 6 here. Again, we're clicking through the dots here to see the kind of information it tells us. We are finally getting in here to the DynamoDB range here on step 8. And if we want to, by the way, okay, hang on, no, I'm getting there. Okay, if we want to, we can actually take this and we can open it back up in the root cause explorer. Now, to open it up in the root cause explorer, you got to be careful. You want to make sure you're in the graph, and here in the graph, you can now say open in root cause explorer. If you click on the wrong 3 vertical dots here, which some people refer to this as a kebab, you may not see the results you're looking for. So make sure you click on the graph here, click on these 3 dots or the kebab or whatever you want to call it. I call it the more action button, and open it up in the root cause explorer. And that then takes us to the root cause explorer. And again, we can see our information and see basically what's happening here. Same information we saw before, but this is the full baked root cause explorer. Okay. Now, the reason I want to go in here is that I can click on the entities tab. And here in the entities tab, when I click on my DynamoDB, I can say, you know what, I want to open this up in my entity dashboard. I want to troubleshoot this farther. So when I click on entity dashboard, now it takes me back to my Explorer in my AWS observability, and it's inside of my AWS DynamoDB. So it took me back into my Explorer, back into this process. Here in this process, this capacity planning dashboard is nice, but what I want to see are my events, the events that have happened here. So here in my events, I can see where my events are happening. I can see that I've got a total of 2 errors, total of 5 different events, delete, update table, all that good stuff. I can see my events over time. So I can see when people updated tables, when they deleted tables, that sort of thing. And I can see who my users are. Down below, I can see my top errors. This has to do with the scribe table. I'm going to change this window just a little bit. I'm going to go back to 60 minutes here. And there's a reason why I'm doing that, but I'm going to click on the top errors. And again, I'm going to change the time frame to 60 minutes. And so I notice here I've got the scribe table, update table, and all that good stuff. And then, of course, I can do my all table events. Now, what we want to do is we've got an idea that there's a problem with my right throttling events. Somebody changed something that caused my right throttle events to change. What could they do it with? The only thing they can do it with is an update table. So I want to take my top errors query here. These are all result of a query. And in my query here, right above here, I click on the three vertical dots, and I can open this up in my log search engine. So in my top errors, I want to find that kebab or three vertical dots. I want to click on open and search. This takes me to my log search. And here I get the results of my log search. And again, I want to make sure I'm going back 16 minutes. And I can rerun my query. And then over here is my messages. These are the raw messages that make up this information. So this is my query that displays that stuff on my dashboard. And what I want to do is I want to add to this query. If I look at the field here called event name, in event name, I have two different values. So again, I'm looking at my messages tab, in case you're trying to follow along here. Messages tab. And in my messages tab, this is my field browser. And in my field browser, I want to find the field called event name, and I want to click on it. And I notice there's two events in there, describe table or update table. Well, if somebody describes table, that doesn't impact or change the table. If somebody does an update table, it will change the table. So I want to click on update table over here. That's going to add a filter to my query. And now I can see my two messages here. And I can see that somebody went into my DynamoDB, specifically JSON and OnKit, and they changed my values. So what happened is they went into my table and they changed my values, which resulted in my throttling events. And so now I can go back and say, hey guys, why did you change the table? What's going on here? Can we change it back? Make sure everything works, that sort of thing. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is lab 1. Questions? And again, the book explains step by step what we're doing. Yeah. So we can find out that somebody made a change here, and we can then ask them why they made that change, and can we change it back? And that's lab 1, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. All right. Any questions so far? What I want to do is I want to do this next couple of slides. I want to talk about tracing, and then we'll take a break. So I'm going to get the second lab done, and we'll take a break. Okay. So here's another poll activity. Apps using microservices-based architecture use distributed platforms, right? AWS, Azure, that sort of thing. They typically have different layers in their infrastructure. Which observability tool or technique will help us deal with transaction level tracking? We're looking at transaction level tracking. Which one do you think? Is it logs, metrics, or tracing? A lot of you say tracing. You are absolutely correct. So if you haven't already figured out, these polls are designed to set us up for what we're going to talk about. So earlier we talked about root cause explorer and metrics. Now we're going to talk about tracing. Okay. So here we go. Tracing, again, is one of those pillars of our observability platform here, right? Metrics typically only look for known failures, known metrics that we're tracking, right? Observability requires a complete understanding of things, not just the metrics that we're monitoring. And so logs and metrics are very helpful, but ultimately for transaction processing, it's going to be tracing that's going to save the day here, okay? What is tracing, right? In a microservices architecture, a user can do a wide variety of things. Say they want to log in. In a microservices architecture, it could start with their computer. It could then be routed to one of the domain controllers, one of the authentication providers. It may then get routed to another secondary MFA type provider, multi-factor authentication provider. And again, these are all different providers that it may go to. So there's an individual path that gets taken here, and we need to know what path happened when things start going wrong. Maybe one of these little nodes has gone down, and therefore there's a problem. The easiest way to think about tracking, though, and tracing is if you think about a package, right? So if you and I ship a package, give me a second here. If we ship a package, we can see where that package has been. We can see all the places it's gone through. We can see what's happening, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That is kind of like tracing. We can see all the processes of what happens where. Now, let me go back to this slide, right? In your infrastructure on your AWS environment, using tools like Kubernetes and stuff, you've got a whole wide variety of different microservices that come into play. Your application deals with a bunch of different app components, a bunch of different platform technologies. And so to be able to trace across that becomes very, very critical. Okay. That's why that slide's there. So if you think about the actions that occur, right? A user logs in, they go through a certain process. Then maybe they want to place an order. We go to Amazon.com and place an order, for example. Then we pay our bill as part of Amazon.com, and then we log out. Again, these all go through various different channels, different events, different parts of our trace. So if we're talking about tracing, we want to talk about Sumo Logic coffee. The Sumo Logic coffee delivers a hot, fast cup of coffee. That's our job. That's what we do. There are thousands of Sumo Logic coffee locations out and about. You may notice them as kind of a green competitor type company that's very popular, at least in the United States, but they're copyrighted, so we can't use them. So we decided to come up with our own name, Sumo Logic Coffee, but it's patterned after that. So just thought you might enjoy that. So if you ever go into one of those places, one of those Sumo Logic coffee places, and you look at what happens, you got something that looks like this, right? A customer places the order. The order posts to the barista. The barista initiates the coffee machine. The machine checks the bean levels, and then if it has enough beans, it grinds the beans. Then the machine checks the water levels, and if it has enough water, it provides water. Pours out that cup of coffee for the customer. Customer pays for the order. Credit card is approved. Customer picks up the order. Each one of these steps is a microservice. And we want to understand the transactions that occur. And of course, obviously, 99 times out of 100, everything works great. It's that 1% time when things don't work great, we have to understand where the transaction failed, so we can see where the process, whether it was a problem in the process. Okay, and that's what tracing does for us. Here we have Abel. Abel's a good coffee lover, right? Orders coffee from Sumo Logic through our awesome app, right? And when he orders this coffee, it's basically going to go to two different systems. Two different systems. The machine service is going to grind the beans and dispense the water and pour the cup of coffee. The payment system is going to process that payment transaction, calculate the cost, update, go out to a checkout service and process their credit card. And we can see, by the way, across here, how long things took in the process. And we can see by status color if there are issues. So again, if you think about it, client wants coffee. Client orders coffee. Bartista says, okay, got it. Let me get you some coffee. It's pretty simple. But if you break it down, and that's kind of like the whole trace there. But if we break it down into bits by bits and spans and things like that, there's a lot more involved here. So again, from an observer, client orders coffee at time T0, Bartista receives time at time T1, prepares coffee, delivers coffee at time T2, customer gets coffee at time T3, customer goes on their happy way. But as we said earlier, because there's microservices and stuff involved, there's a lot more involved. So this whole process is called the trace ID. From the time they order coffee till the time they get their coffee, that's a trace ID. Now, each microservice is a span. So it spans the trace, right? these little activities that happen. So the client sends a coffee order. That's span ID 1. Bartista receives the coffee request. That's span ID 2. Oh, look, I got a ticket. Bartista processes the coffee. It's span ID 3, right? Operates the coffee machine. Checks and makes sure it's got beans to grind and water to dispense and all that stuff. Okay. And then delivers the coffee. So we've got a trace, which is the entire transaction. We've got spans, which are the various microservices. Now, you and I have the ability in Sumo Logic using something called service maps, which allow us to see our application. And again, this is automatically built from our tracing data in real time. So it allows us to see what's happening. And rather than getting into this death by PowerPoint, let me stop my slides. And why don't you and I go into Sumo Logic here? And by the way, if you got a bunch of tabs open from our last exercise, if you click on the more action button or the 3 vertical dots or the kebab on any one of those tabs, you'll see you have an option to close all tabs. So let's do that. Let's close all tabs from the last exercise. Let's go to new, and under new, let's open up the service map. So here, when I click on service map, I can see all of my transactional data and transactional processing here, okay? There are 2 applications. There is a coffee bar application, and there's a payment service application, totally unrelated. I can go up here and I can filter and say, I only want to see the coffee bar app, and I'm going to, okay? And then if I want to, I could look for specific services, and I'll get into that in just a little bit. But down here, I have a legend. And the first thing you're probably likely to notice is that I've got colors, right? Red is bad, blue is fine. So red are abnormal services. The services are not behaving normally, okay? So maybe I want to investigate them. The second thing you might notice is I've got different kinds of icons. I've got cloud icons. I've got circle icons. Again, my different entities, my different applications, and that sort of thing. I also have different sizes. The sizes is the amount of activity that I'm getting. Again, these all make great questions. So I want to make sure that you guys are all prepared for the exam. And if I were to go back to our lovely product documentation, and in our product documentation, what I am looking for is I'm looking for the chapter on traces. And here under the chapter on traces, I can click on service maps and dashboards, and I can see all kinds of things about the size and the arrows and all of that good stuff. And I'm going to take this lovely link and I'm going to put it in the chat box for you all to help you on those exam questions. Okay. All right. So what we want to do is we are going to investigate an issue here. So we're going to go back to our Sumo Logic coffee here. And I'm going to take this water service one here. And I'm going to click on my water service. Now, when I click on my water service, I see here my water service. I can see some latency metrics, some requests per second, all that fun stuff. I can see my environment. And if I want to, I can open it up in other applications and other things. I can open up my logs. I can open up traces. In our case, what we're going to do is we're going to open up in traces. So I'm going to click on traces. Now, traces is another tool that we have, and traces shows me all of the spans and how things worked and whether there were problems. Okay. So, for example, here, this whole transaction, I see it took 896 milliseconds. This transaction took 292 milliseconds. I can see the number of spans that it has. I can see the number of errors it has. And I can see its overall status. Okay. Just for fun, I'm going to take this first one. I'm going to click on it. And it's going to show me that particular trace. So it's going to provide me a trace view where I can see all of the activity that's happened here. Now, first thing you'll notice up here is different colors. Each one of those colors represents a microservice. So I was doing various things, the coffee bar front end, right, where I'm making the coffee and all that good stuff. That's part of the service. Here I've got some Lambda activity here. Here's another service there. Different colors, different services, different microservices. Anywhere where I've got an error, I'm going to have a red line. Now, it might be easier if you choose to error span only, and that will gray out anything that doesn't have a red line, making it easier for you to find things that you want to focus on. Okay. So you can turn that on if you want. If that switch is not there, if you don't see that switch, there's no errors in here. Okay. The only time this will show up is if there's an error in the trace. Now, what I want to do is I want to go and look at these errors on this column, and I'm looking for the one that specifically says post prepare coffee, because that's where my error is going to occur. Post prepare coffee. Let's see what's in the chat box here. Good. Thanks, Nanda. Post prepare coffee here, and I can go in here and I can see what my metric is. I can see how long it's taking. I can see my status. I got a 502 status code. What the heck's a 502 status code mean? Well, we're going to find out. Then if I want to here, I can open up the logs for this particular activity, this particular span. Remember, spans that smaller section, or I can look at the whole trace. What we want to do is we want to open up and look at the span ID. And when we do that, it opens up our logs. Now, the latest message is always at the top. The older message is at the bottom. So the message here at the bottom says, hey, I've got new order. I need you to give me some, some beans, some grains. And then the latest message says, I'm sorry, I don't have any grains. That's why we got the 502. That's why this transaction broke down. So we were able to figure out, gee, they were out of grains. They were out of beans, coffee beans. So again, maybe we need to make sure they've got plenty more coffee beans available to them, make bigger hoppers, whatever, to prevent this from happening. And when it does happen, how long does it take the Bartista to refill it, restock it, that sort of thing. But as you can see, when I've got a various transactional type system and I'm going from point A to point B to point C to point D, I can see where things went awry and I can see why they went awry. So the same thing if I'm shipping a package, right? If that package doesn't get to where it's supposed to go, I can see where it got waylaid in the process. And I can see perhaps what other action was taken to resolve this problem. And that's tracing, folks. So here in lab 2, again, you started with the service map. You clicked on, in our case, we grabbed the machine service, and then we went into traces on it. We found the span ID that said prepare coffee. And we went into our span ID here in the logs, and we found out that we didn't have any beans. Now, if you wanted to, you could go back to your service map. You could say, let's grab this coffee service, and you could do the same sort of thing, right? You could open it up in traces, find a bad trace, investigate, all of that fun stuff. So that's traces. Any questions about traces? Well, I think we've been at it a little while. What do you say we take about a 10-minute break? So ladies and gentlemen, I've started my 10-minute timer. And if you would, let's go ahead and see you back here when this counter gets down to 0. So take a break.
Hello?
Yes?
Sorry, I have a question. Not
go
sure if it's too late. So actually, when you view the trace, like you click on the service first and then you open the trace, does that mean that we are going to see the trace from any service that point to the service that you click?
That's correct. So what happens is you define a collector for that's just trace data. It's going to use OpenTelemetry. And you're going to define whether it's Kubernetes or it's non-Kubernetes application or whatever. You're automatically going to click this, and you'll see that on your system map. So yeah, cool stuff. You're welcome. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. So what about if there are multiple sources that point to that service that you click? So the trace that you see will be mixed between different service that make the call to that service, right?
Yep. Right. So what happens is in the service map, you'll see that the services themselves, not where they're from. But then when you go into the service and the trace is, you'll see all the different places it came from.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your question. Again, folks, we'll see you back here in about 8 minutes and 37 seconds. Have a great break. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. So hopefully you all had a good break, get a chance to top off that coffee cup, tea cup, juice cup, whatever, and clear your mind for a few minutes. So we basically went through labs 1 and 2. We talked about the root cause explorer. We've talked about tracing. Also, for those of you who came in late, I have reposted the lab guide in the chat box so that you can get that information off the lab guide. And again, just a friendly reminder that here in the Illuminate portal, when you log into Illuminate, you'll see that there's a resources section. And if you click on that resources section, if you filter it by training, all of our slides and any lab guides and stuff like that are here. And you can download those and use those for the various training classes for this session and as well as the other sessions and stuff that are there. Okay. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. All right. So what do you say we continue on here and get back to the matter at hand? So as you've seen before, right, we tend to do a poll activity to talk about what we're going to talk about next, right? So with the help of metrics, we get indicators that something is wrong with the app. We now want to figure out why. Operative word here is why it happened. With more details, which tool of the 3 tools, logs, metrics, or tracing, would you use to find out why? Put it in the chat box. And most of you are jumping on logs, and you are absolutely correct. Thank you. Absolutely right. So logs is the right answer. So let's talk about observability using logs. Let's do lab number 3 and see how logs can help us. All right. By the way, nice work on that. So what we want to do is we can use logs and a log search to basically filter. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into lab number 3, and I'm going to focus on a good scenario here on when to use labs. So back to our PDF on page 21. What we want to do is we're going to go back to that scenario where we are, again, a site reliability engineer, and we're dealing with this Travel Logic application or the coffee app, and we focus on US East 1 last 24 hours, and we got problems with our Lambda server. We're now responsible for the Lambda server. So they want us to go click the new button, click explore. They want to make sure we selected AWS observability, and they want to go through prod US East 1 and go down to Lambda. Okay. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go into our Sumo Logic environment. And by the way, again, if all these tabs bother you, you can click on the more action button, that 3 vertical buttons here, 3 vertical dots, or the kebab, as some people call it. If you click on that, you have the option to close all tabs. So we're going to click new, we're going to click explore, brings up our AWS observability, and that's what we want, our AWS observability here. And here on our AWS observability, we're going to go into prod, we're going to go into US East 1, and now we're going to go find our Lambda information. So we're going to go down here to AWS Lambda information, because we've got an issue with our Lambda somehow, some way, and we need to investigate this. So here I can see in my audit here, my caller locations, my various performance, what AWS services are using Lambda, the durations. I can see a series of successes and failures, okay? In fact, under successes or failures, in the last 24 hours, it looks like I've gotten 7,868 errors. Ooh, that's not good. Now, when I look here at my top error messages, it looks like my function of get billing information has generated the most errors, 719 errors, okay? So I want to focus on that a little bit. I want to see what's causing that. All right. So again, I'm turning in my lab guide from page 21 to page 22. Again, it's basically showing you a little bit about the application. It wants us to go into the successes and failures app. Again, we want to see that that get billing information function is giving us the maximum number of errors. And so we want to then filter our dashboard for this get billing information. And the way we do this is, you notice it's automatically filtered my account for prod, my region, my namespace. Now in my function, I'm going to get rid of that star, and I can start typing in GET, and I see that I've got get billing info. I'm going to click on that, and now it's going to filter all my panels here in my dashboard to only show me my get billing info. So you can use this to filter various things. And like I said, these are just little filter funnels that you can use to filter things down. Now, again, all of these panels here are from a log search. Okay, they all generate a log search, but some have different information than others. And the reason I mention that is because my most frequent function operator here has in it the users who are logging in to do the maintenance of our system. Okay, these other ones don't, which is why I'm going to go to my most frequent function operator. I'm going to click on this three vertical dots here, my more action button, and I'm going to say open in search. Now, this is the underlying query that makes this up. And for those of you who want to learn how to do queries and stuff like that, you probably want to take our search mastery class, but that's a conversation for another time. But here in those classes, we teach you how to build queries and all that. So this query is running for this particular period of time. And it's showing me under my get billing information, there are 4 events that are running: an invoke event, a list function event, an update function configuration, and an update function code. Okay. Now, what's causing my Lambda error is when somebody does a configuration update. So what I want to do is I want to filter this and my underlying messages here so that I only see the update configuration function. And the way I do that is on my aggregates tab, you'll see here's my update function configuration. I only want to see those 5 messages because that's what's causing the Lambda error. If somebody invokes it, that's not going to cause a Lambda error. If somebody does a list function, it's not going to cause a Lambda error. Okay, we know the information, we know what's going on. So that's basically it. Now, if you didn't, you'd obviously have to do trial and error. But if I look at my event name here in my messages tab, in my field browser, if I look at my event name, I see my 4 different event names. And if I click on my update function configuration, it adds a line to the bottom of my query. It adds a filter that's going to filter for only that event name. And now I can look through here and I can see that on my AWS environment, username of Mark Smith is the one who did this configuration change. And I could actually look here at the raw data if I need to. And I can ask Mark, what did you change? Because what you changed is now generating Lambda problems. And so we can figure it all out. Again, logs always tell us why. So logs are where we go to find out why things have happened. You know, before we added all this observability tools that we've recently added, we've always had the ability to go back and see why. But here so far, we've learned about root cause, we've learned about explore, we've learned about service maps, spans, and traces. Some cool stuff. All right. And that, by the way, is lab number 3. Any questions about lab number 3? So back to my slides, we've got one more lab left to talk about, and then we're going to turn you loose on your exams. So again, one of your logs best bet in observability when you're trying to figure out why. Okay. The metrics will get you. The metrics will typically tell us where the problem exists. They'll tell us there's a problem with Lambda when we look at our graphs and stuff, but understand what caused that. That's a job for logs. Okay. And so we did basically found that information. Okay. All right. Last lab we're going to talk about here is we're going to play with some other stuff with logs. Okay. When logs are our best bet here, how we can use logs, some of the powerful functions we have in logs. So I'm going to stop the slide here for a second, and I'm going to go to our lab guide, and I'm going to go to lab 4, working with logs. And here I want to look at some various information. So I can take this code that's right here under lab. This lab begins, it says, type in the following query. I can swipe over this code and I can copy it. And I can come back to Sumo Logic and I can click on my new button. I'm going to click log search and I can paste this information in. Okay. And basically what this query is doing is it's looking at my CloudTrail logs. Then it's specifically focused on my AWS region, which it's calling AWS region. Then it's going to do a count by AWS region. So let me do this. Let me take, first of all, and word wrap this other pipe. So let me put my cursor in front of that last pipe there on the second line. And let me do a shift enter or an alt enter. If you're on a Windows keyboard, it's an alt enter. If you're on a Mac keyboard, it's a shift enter. And that will word wrap that. Now, the next thing I'm going to do here, just to show you and explain stuff, is I'm going to comment out a line. So I'm going to comment out the last line. To comment on a line, it's 2 forward slashes. Or I like 2 forward slashes and a space. Proves readability. But 2 forward slashes will comment out the line. So when I run this, I've commented out these lines 2 and 3. When I run this, I am now looking at my CloudTrail data. And I have here about, in the last 15 minutes, 2,679 messages in my case. Thanks, Nana. And so I've got 2,679 messages, and I can look at these messages. I can see them and all that stuff. But what I want to do is I want to parse some of the fields from them. This AWS region field, I want to parse. And so there's a way we can do this in JSON. And the other thing we can do here, besides parsing that field, let me uncomment out that line. I can also put an as clause on. So maybe I want to call it AWS region all in lowercase. Or maybe I want to call it something like AWS _ region. However you want it to be displayed. So when I put this as clause in here, it will create this field name called whatever I used in my as clause. Okay. So I can change how this appears by modifying the as clause. And then in my count statement, I want to make sure I modify my count by AWS region so it looks like what I've extracted up there. And so what happens is when it does a count, it goes through my 2,000 plus messages here, and it counts them by AWS region if I want to here. And so I see all my different traffic from all my different regions, and basically how, majority of it came from US West 1. Well, considering Sumo Logic is headquartered in San Francisco, that probably logically makes sense. Okay, but I can see where things are coming from here if I want to. Okay. So what we're trying to show you is how you can simply create a simple query to get the information that you want. Now, because I've got this stuff aggregated, if I want to, I can create maybe a pie chart, show me my percentage breakdowns, or maybe I want to create an area chart or a line chart or whatever kind of chart that I want, and then I can add that to a dashboard. Okay. Or I can go back to my regular numbers. Some people like numbers, some people like images or shapes. Just depends on, and some people like both. So basically that's that. Now, back into here, like I said, is I can look at my messages. And I can basically see one of the things that I want to point out is down here is my field browser. And if I go into my messages tab, this is my field browser. And if I want to select a particular message, I can do that. I can click on this region field And that would also then display a region values. Or maybe I want, we played earlier with event name. I can check mark that and I can see maybe my event names. Okay, the different events that have happened here. So you can simply enable those fields or disable those fields if you want to display them. Okay, that's what my field browser does. Now, what we want to do is go ahead and move on and talk about the log reduce operator. Okay, the log reduce operator. And I'll be honest with you, I don't like this example at all. So I'm going to go over here on page 29, and I am going to change this up a little bit. And I'm going to do step 4 on the page 29, but I'm going to do it manually. So I'm going to click a new log search, it's log source, log search. And I'm going to type in here underscore. And notice as I start typing in, the type ahead kind of gives me choices based on what I typed. And I want source category equals. And source category for us is a metadata tag. Source, collector, those are all metadata tags that we can use to specify the data that we want to see, right? So for example, here I want to see source category equals labs/snort. Those of you not familiar with it, snort is a application, firewall type application, security type application. And it shows me basically, what folks are doing on my network, what they're trying to do. And I can see certain threats here. Now, in the last 15 minutes, I've got about 1,500 messages. If I'm looking over the last day, or better, let's make it the last 24 hours. Okay. That is, a lot of messages to go through. Now, good news is you don't have to go through those messages. If you click on this log reduce button, and this is part of the advanced analytics we have in our product. If you click on log reduce, you'll see it adds a pipe here and does a log reduce. And what's going to happen is it's now going to rerun this query, and it's going to combine my like messages together. So if I'm looking here at my messages, trying to figure out where I need to pay attention to, which message is occurring most, this log reduce makes quick work of it. So I can see that right now, and it's still chugging through here. It's still rerunning the 140,000 messages that I have. But the most of them appear to be a bug port configuration file access, attempted information leak. So what happens here when I investigate this is I realize that an application, when they're running this application, it's trying to modify the config.conf file. And it's actually part of the install. So it looks like it's a threat. It's identified as a threat, but it's really not a threat at all. And so what I can do is where I've got these thumbs up and thumbs down, right now, by default, its relevant score is 9, fairly high. 10 is the highest it goes. If it's not important, if it's not really a threat, I can demote it so that its relevant score goes down to 0. That's really not important. This is somebody's trying to update an application. That's what happens. Okay. And so I can go through and investigate these now that I know the ones that are occurring the most often within the 24-hour period. Okay. So that's what log reduce does, is it combines my like messages together. Very popular, very handy. Now, another function we have is log compare. Okay. Log compare. And if you don't mind, let me change this time frame. I'll explain in a minute why. I'm going to go to 60 minutes. And I'm going to do a log compare. Okay. Now that changes my command up here. Instead of doing log reduce, it does a log compare time shift 24 hours ago. Okay. So what's happening? What it's doing is it's taking my logs right now. It's going to go back 60 minutes and it's going to do a log reduce. Then it's going to go look 24 hours ago, yesterday's logs, go back 60 minutes, do another log reduce. Then it's going to compare those two log reduces. So here I see a series of percentages change. Did this message occur more or less than it did 24 hours ago over the last 60 minutes? So here it decreased a little bit. Here it increased a bit. There it increased quite a bit. but again, the numbers are somewhat lower. So the point is, you can see whether problems are going away, problems are getting worse, you know, how much getting worse are they, that sort of thing. Okay. I'm going to change this just a little bit here, guys, to 6 hours. And there's a reason why I'm doing this. Just bear with me. It's going to add some more time here. The reason, by the way, I changed the time earlier from 24 hours to something else was I thought it might be confusing to say, okay, it's going to go back 24 hours, and then it's going to go back another 24 hours to compare. That doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense. So what I was looking to do here, guys and gals, is that I was hoping to see the words new or gone. So what it's doing is, again, it's comparing my last 6 hours worth of logs from now, compare that to yesterday's last 6 hours. It's going back 24 hours, and then it's comparing that. If I change this, and by the way, I can change it to something else. Maybe I want to make this, I want to compare it with last week's logs. So maybe I want to go back 7 days. And so now what it's doing is it's looking at my logs over the last 6 hours, going back to last Tuesday's logs, going back 6 hours, comparing the two. And so the point is, what I'm looking for here is I'm hoping to see words like new or gone. If you see the words new or gone, it means that in the case of new, it means it wasn't there the previous time ago, but it is there now. New means it just showed up. That message wasn't there a week ago, but it's there now. Gone means it was there a week ago and it's gone. Now it's gone. Bye-bye. So you may see besides numbers, the words new or gone. And that's log compare. Okay. So log compare, I'm sorry, that's log compare, log compare. Log compare allows us to compare and do log reduces and compare timeframes. Very handy, very powerful. Back to my documentation. So again, here's my log compare. I can compare logs from yesterday's logs and all that good stuff. And then I've also got a log explain. Now my log explain operator, what it does is it basically runs two sets of data. It has a control set and it has another set of data that it's going to compare. So I'm going to take this code that's on page 33. I'm going to copy this code. And again, I'm going to grab myself a new log search and I'm going to paste this code in. Now I'm going to go back just 15 minutes and I'm going to go ahead and run this. By default, by the way, the setting is set for 15 minutes. Hang on a second. What is it complaining about? Unable to parse input as JSON. Well, I mean, I say it's a warning. This is not an error, this is a warning. But you can see down here at the bottom that it's basically showing me my relevant score here of what I'm looking at. So every time I look for AWS region US West 1, that came up 100% of the time. When I looked for the source IP, that came up 96% of the time. And so on my control set, this is my values, on my test coverage, my uncontrolled set, these are my values. What this does, like I said, this is designed to compare two sets of data. So I can see how things are behaving with regards to, I start to see more errors, new things, that sort of thing. I can compare various sets of data. And that is my log explain operator. And again, the documentation here explains a little bit about what that operator does. Okay. And so hopefully here, folks, we've been able to give you guys a chance to see some of the power and some of the functionality of Sumo Logic, both from a troubleshooting, observability, transparency across your AWS environment, all that sort of thing. Are there any particular questions before I start getting you ready to take the exam? Any questions at all?
What does no drop mean?
Okay, good question. No drop means that it doesn't drop something else, that it filters. So let me answer your question this way. Let me give you an example here. going to go grab myself some Apache error logs. Okay. All right. When we parse fields out of a log, right? When we parse fields out of a log, that parse statement not only extracts the field out, but it also filters my data. So for example, here, you'll notice here I have a mod log SQL statement, and I'm going to do a parse anchor to extract this value out. So I'm going to swipe over this. By the way, notice here I've got about 1,800 messages. If I right click on this and I parse the selected text, it gives me this panel. I then want this message that I want to extract that message. Let's take a minute here. Obviously, a lot of activity is going on in our system. That's why it's taking some time here. It usually doesn't take this long, but obviously got a bunch of classes going, a bunch of users going here. So it's taking longer than it usually does. There we go. Places it with star, and I'm going to refer to this field as message. Okay. When I click submit, it now adds that parse anchor statement. Now, notice I didn't put a no drop in here. So what happens when I run this, to answer your question? It's a great question. I'm down to about 439 messages. Why 439 messages? Because all the messages all have this mod log SQL statement in. So it automatically filters my messages unless I put the no drop statement. No drop means don't delete it, don't drop it. Now I'm back to my original number of messages, and it extracted the ones it could, but it's not filtering for only those messages. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. By the way, one suggestion for you, if you're using, and again, parsing fields out, all that stuff, and you're getting unexplained or unexpected results, add the no drop and see what you're dropping, see what you're deleting. So it's a good troubleshooting tool. Okay. Oh, sorry, Gene. Gene's trying to log back in and he forgot the password. So again, the password, the current password is capital SEPT or capital September capitalized with a capital S 2021 exclamation mark. Now that password will change next month. So it'll change in October. And if you want to know, by the way, what the password is in October, I do not know what that password is yet, but I'll know it when we change it. So the point is, if you want to play in our environment and in October and you want to, you can reach out to me. I'm putting my email address right now in the chat box. So you can reach out to me in October when we change it, and I'll tell you what the new password is. I don't know what it is right now, but I will know when we change it. Okay. And again, we're required, because we're obviously an open system here, to change our password periodically, right? It's a compliance issue. Now, let's go ahead and wrap things up. And let's get you ready to take your exam. So here we go. So hopefully you've observed and you've discovered in our observability solution, we can see what's going on inside of an application. We can see the relationship between the various microservices in our tracing app. We can also see it in our root cause explorer. The thing I love about that root cause explorer is it shows me the relationship between all of your different entities and services and the timelines and stuff associated with that, right? Talked about the case here to track metrics or transactional basis. You got the tracing tool. Metrics provide visibility and insight to understand what's causing a spike. Logs provide comprehensive system details, and they also explain why. So things to think about. We do have a couple of workshops on AWS observability. We also will have the AWS admin class, like I said, a little later today, where we'll talk about setting this stuff up. We'll actually do 3 labs. We'll set up our AWS observability solution. We also will do a configuration and deployment of a Kubernetes cluster. And then we'll set up tracing points so that you get the data into your traces automatically through using OpenTelemetry. So that will be later on today. It's also being offered tomorrow. Now, something else for you. And again, I have to apologize here a little bit. For most of you, if you take one of our classes that you're taking right now, and then you stick around and do the exam, which we're going to go to here in about 5 to 10 minutes, and you complete that exam, if you email us a copy of your certificate, send it to training@sumologic.com and give us your contact information, we will give you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. Now, if you can imagine, we've got a bunch of folks. We got 3 classes running right now with easily 50 people each. We're going to have a lot of these Uber Eats vouchers that we're going to be giving away. So it may take a little bit of time. So when you send this to training@sumologic.com, give us a little bit of time, give us 2 days or so before we get back to you with that voucher. But we'll give you a voucher that you can use for Uber Eats. Now, here's the part where I apologize. For some of you in India, for example, we do not have a relationship with Uber Eats in India. We don't have a relationship with the company in India yet. We are working on that. So for my friends in India, you are not, this offer doesn't work for you, I don't believe. But for everybody else in the world that has Uber Eats, like I said, right after this class, or right after, in a few minutes when I wrap up and we take you to the exam, if you immediately take the exam and you pass it, you can, and by the way, when I say pass it, if you didn't pass it the first time, you could take it again. But if you get it knocked out today, very quickly, we will give you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. All you've got to do is email your certificates, training@sumologic.com, with the account that you want to use for Uber Eats, and we'll send you that Uber Eats voucher. Any questions about that? One other promotion we've got. Before Illuminate here, we had 6 certifications, 6 different classes that we did. We have now, in this Illuminate, added 4 more certifications. This course is one of them. This is our AWS Observability Fundamentals. There's an AWS Observability Admin being taught in a little bit. There's also a Cloud SIEM Fundamentals and a Cloud SIEM Admin. Those are the 4 new ones that we're offering. So we now have 10 certification classes. If you pass 6 of the Sumo Logic certifications, of the 10, we will send you a backpack. Now, I need to qualify that also, right? If you're in the US, it's easy. We can send you a backpack, not a problem. If we send it to somebody in India right now, the shipping charges, along with the taxes and stuff like that, might be kind of painful, all right? So we want you to be aware that, shipping internationally could be a bit of a problem, but we are running this promotion. So again, there's a little form that you can fill out. You'll find that we have this on our website, but if you don't see the form or you need this information, let me know and I will gladly provide it to you, okay? But we're offering backpacks if you get 6 of the Sumo Logic certifications out of the 10 classes. And last but not least, obviously we got a lot of classes going on here during Illuminate. Really want you to take advantage of that. But for those of you, like I said, across the world, we have some European EMEA cert jams running October 19th and 20th. And we've got some US Western Central cert jams also running October 19th and 21st, as well as some East Coast US cert jams on the 26th and 27th. And for those of you who are in APAC, the 27th and 28th, we've got some cert jams out there. So whichever is closest to you, whatever works best for you for the time, you are welcome to sign up. All of our classes and all of our certifications and all that stuff are free. I think free is a wonderful price. So I encourage you to take advantage of it. Also, if you go to www.sumologic.com/learn/train, you'll see that you can see when our schedules are, when we're offering things, all that. I do hope we get back at some point back to face-to-face and we travel around and get a chance to do this face-to-face. But for right now, this is the way it is, and we'll continue to do it. Now, what I want to do is I want to take you guys in and get you ready to take your certification exams. But before I do that, I want to see if there are any questions. Any questions at all? All right. If you look at your Sumo Logic environment, specifically if you opened up here and you opened up the navigation panel by clicking on the hamburger menu or Sumo Logic to open this thing up, down here in the corner, it says you are training analyst, whatever number, right? We don't want you to be training analyst, whatever number. we want you to log out of our training environment. When you take an exam, we want to make sure you're logged in with your name. So we want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment. And if there are some of you who do not have a company Sumo Logic environment, you can sign up for one for free. So if you don't have a company environment, you can sign up for a free environment. By the way, I just realized I put my email address, only sent it to Gene. So let me fix that, folks. Apologize. It's responding back to one of his earlier questions. So there's my email address. Again, here's if you need to sign up for a free account. Okay. But what I want you to do is I want you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment or log into this free account that you can sign up for. I'm going to go ahead and log into mine. Oops. Soon I could type here. Jeepers. Okay. All right, so I'm going to log in with my credentials in my Sumo Logic environment. So down here in my navigation panel, it has my first name and my last name. Okay. Now, for many of you, I want to just do this preemptively. Okay. There is an interesting security feature in our product. Normally, you cannot go from one environment in Sumo Logic to another environment in Sumo Logic without your permission. So what I'd like you all to do is log into your company's Sumo Logic environment or your demo environment. Open up this navigation panel by, again, clicking on the Sumo Logic or the hamburger menu. Click on Help down here at the bottom and click on Community. Now, when you click on Community, many of you will see a panel that will appear that says you need to verify your email. And there's a button on it. I don't have that panel because I did this years ago. And once you do it, it's done, it's fixed, never a problem again. But if you get that panel that says verify email, click on that button. And then within about a minute or so, you're going to get an email from Sumo Logic. And in that email, it's going to have a button on that email that when you click on that button, now you'll be able to move from one Sumo Logic environment to another Sumo Logic environment to another Sumo Logic environment without any problems. Okay, so I wanted to head that off at the pass, pardon the cliche. Now, to get in to take our exam, you're going to click in your Sumo Logic environment on the Home tab here, where the Home is. You're going to click on Certification over here, and you're going to click on this Get Certified button. And when you do that, it should now take you into our learning management system. It doesn't take you in that learning management system. We got to go back in and again, go into Help, click on Community, and go through that rigmarole again. Now, here in this Sumo Logic learning management system, here's where we keep the current passwords, by the way. So you can send me an email in October if you want, but we'll also post it out here. Okay. Here are various tiles representing all our various courses. And then here's our observability tile, which I'll get into in just a minute. Before I get into that, up here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile. There's a reason why I mention it. And I want to point something out here to you. So let me go into my profile here. This profile keeps track of all of your exams. When you passed it, all that fun stuff. And you can view your certificate here if you want to, in all of its glory, print it out, that sort of thing. You can also, if you want to here, let's close this up for a minute. You can also add it to your LinkedIn profile. Pretty easy to do. Now, the reason I mention this is, and I'm going to scroll down here in my profile. I'm going to go click on Done. Okay. Is here in the observability tile is where our observability exams are. So find the observability tile, click on it. This exam is the Observability Fundamentals exam. That's the class that you just had. Later today and tomorrow, we're offering this class, but this is the class that you're in. I'm going to click in here and I'm going to point out a couple things. I don't want you to click in here just yet. Just bear with me a moment. So the first thing you might notice when you click in here, though, is you'll notice there's a button up here that says register. Click on that button. Boom, you're registered. Piece of cake. Done. Okay. Now, as I said, I don't want you to do anything just yet. Just watch me. So it says before you start here, once you're registered, before you start, you got 20 questions. You got 60 minutes to complete it. The exams are open book, open notes, ask the instructor, whatever you need. The questions are fill in the blanks, matching text, multiple choice, et cetera, et cetera. A passing score for this exam is 70%. Good luck. When you click next, this takes you to the exam. And so here I can see my exam. Here's my timer up here for my 60 minutes or 1 hour. And when you're ready to start, you go ahead and go to town. Now, truth be told, I'm going to answer a couple of questions here because there's something very important here that I'm taking the time to show you. And I want to make that point. So let me answer a couple of questions. When I use the log reduce operator, I want to see things grouped together by like formats. Okay. Match the following operator here with its description. So hang on a second. Let's do log reduce, string and pattern, log compare, use to compare signature counts, log explain, compare sets of structured logs, and then compare is used to deal with numeric aggregated data. I'm going to answer that question and be done. Now, I'm only answering 2 questions. I'm going to go ahead and submit my results, submit my answers. And I'm going to fail miserably. I only answered 2 questions, right? So it says, hey, you got 10%, but you didn't pass. The point is this. When you take the exam and hopefully you've passed, please click this submit result button. Because when you click the submit result button, it writes it to your profile. If you don't click this button, the exam didn't happen. It's not in your profile. You're not going to see your certificate, stuff like that. Click that submit results, please, if you pass. If you don't pass, I don't care if you click it or not. And again, you can take these exams over and over and over again. But I will be here for the next hour while you take this exam. So if you've got any questions, I will be here to help you. Any questions about taking the exams? Again, if you don't want to take the exam, you don't have to, but obviously we're trying to make it worth your while with Uber Eats. An Uber Eats $15 voucher. Otherwise, I am done with the lecture and the various sharing of things. So I am going to stop my sharing. Before I do say goodbye, let me turn on my camera one last time, though. For those of you who are leaving us, and say thank you for spending your morning or afternoon or evening with me. And hopefully you learned a little bit about AWS observability. If there's anything we can do to help you, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to be here in case you have any questions for the exam. And that is it. Thank you all for attending. We'll hope to see you again in other classes and other sessions.